you know?
Yeah, yeah, it rings true, doesn't it? It came from a very good source in the family who's been reliable to me in the royal household. There's no reason not to. I doubled down on it after he came forward. I think he would have been better leading the whole thing. I want to thank him because he propelled my.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. The British monarchy, that ancient and weathered edifice, has withstood centuries of scandal, but it is the modern tremors, amplified by the relentless megaphone of the 24-hour news cycle, that often seem to threaten its very foundations. In the latest episode of Crown and Conflict, host Kinsey Schofield sits down with royal author Andrew Lowney, not to discuss the well-trodden saga of the Sussexes, but to delve into a different, yet strangely parallel narrative of ambition, rivalry, and alleged opportunism within the extended royal fold. The source is Lowney's explosive new book, entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York, and the revelations within paint a picture of a family dynamic so fraught with tension and personal ambition that it makes the current royal dramas feel almost like a sequel waiting to happen. Please do not forget to subscribe to the channel, thank you. The conversation immediately grips with a claim that feels ripped from a Shakespearean tragedy whispered in a modern corridor. Lowney asserts that Prince Andrew, the Duke of York himself, allegedly took Prince Harry aside before his wedding to Meghan Markle and delivered a stark fraternal warning that marrying the American actress would be the biggest mistake ever. The irony of this, should it be true, is so thick it could be cut with a ceremonial sword. Here is Prince Andrew, a man whose own life choices have precipitated a catastrophic fall from grace and become a monumental liability for the crown, positioning himself as a voice of experience and caution. The warning is less about protocol or duty and more a cynical, perhaps even jealous assessment from a man who understands the mechanics of royal life as a transactional reality. In Lowney's telling, Andrew's worldview is one of titles, status, and opportunism, and he allegedly saw in Meghan Markle not a kindred spirit but a rival operator. This single anecdote reframes the Sussex exit not merely as a clash between modernity and tradition, but as part of a longer, seedier history of royals and their associates jockeying for position, influence, and financial gain. This notion of the royal sphere as a viper's nest of opportunism is the central thesis that Lowney explores through the lens of the York family. The accusations that Meghan was an opportunist, which have swirled since the relationship became public, are presented not as a novel phenomenon unique to her, but as a behavior pattern with precedent within the very family that now seems to shun her. Lowney's book suggests that the court of King Charles III and the wider royal family has always been a stage for such players, and Meghan's real crime, in the eyes of some within the institution, was not her ambition, but perhaps her proficiency at a game they believed was theirs alone to play. She understood the currency of global celebrity in the 21st century better than they did, and she leveraged her royal status with a speed and effectiveness that left the traditionalists bewildered and the established operators, like the Yorks, feeling threatened. The drama, however, stretches back decades, and Lowney's most scintillating claims involve the other women in Andrew's life, namely his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson. The discussion with Schofield peels back the curtain on the intense and often bitter rivalry between Fergie and the sainted Princess Diana. This was not merely a competition for positive press clippings, it was a battle for relevance, financial security, and the affection of the public, and crucially, the establishment. Lowney shares behind-the-scenes stories of their clashing agendas, their mutual resentment, and their desperate attempts to secure their positions within a system that ultimately had little use for them once they had ceased to be compliant assets. Ferguson, often portrayed as the bumbling, less sophisticated counterpart to Diana's glamorous grief, is recast as a determined and complex figure fighting for survival in a gilded cage. And then there is the bombshell rumor that feels like a storyline from a paperback thriller. Lowney discusses Sarah Ferguson's alleged fascination with John F. Kennedy Jr. This wasn't mere celebrity admiration. The suggestion is of a calculated ambition to transcend her royal downfall by aligning herself with American royalty. The image of the Duchess of York, freshly separated and globally ridiculed, setting her sights on the son of a presidential icon, is a staggering portrait of audacious reinvention. It underscores a relentless drive to remain at the center of the world's attention by any means necessary. A trait that Lowney's narrative implies is a defining feature of the York brand. What Lowney's revelations and Schofield's probing discussion ultimately achieve is a profound contextualization of the current royal crisis. The saga of Harry and Meghan is not an aberration, but an inheritance. It is the latest chapter in a long-running story about what happens when the rigid, duty-bound profound world of the monarchy intersects with the ambitious, personality-driven world of modern media and celebrity. The warnings, the accusations of opportunism, the fierce rivalries, and the desperate grasps for relevance, these are the patterns that have played out before. Entitled suggests that the House of York, through its own tumultuous history, wrote the playbook on royal scandal and personal ambition. Harry and Meghan, perhaps without even realizing it, were simply reading from a script that had already been penned. A drama of rise and fall that was, it seems, a family tradition long before they ever took the stage.
Predicts Prince William will be ruthless.
And should Prince Harry develop a charity to compete with Senabale? We'll discuss that. Also, breaking news about Netflix that we obviously...
The ceaselessly churning engine of the Sussex content machine has shifted into a new gear, and the Royal Commentariat is once again leaning in, microphones hot, to decipher the latest signals emanating from Montecito. On this week's episode of Heirs and Spares, hosts Kinsey Schofield and Rupert Bell perform a deft dual autopsy. First on the confirmed bones of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's new, albeit reduced, Netflix contract, and second on the more speculative but tantalizing weekend reports that the Duke of Sussex is considering a dramatic return to the African continent, not for a holiday, but to launch a rival charitable venture. Together, these developments sketch a portrait of a couple meticulously, and perhaps defiantly, building a parallel existence to the institution they left behind. A shadow court with its own treasury, its own media empire, and its own philanthropic ambitions. The confirmation of the renewed Netflix deal, while stripped of the fanfare and eye-watering figures of their initial $100 million pact, is arguably more telling in its modesty. This is not a victory lap, it is a business adjustment. The streaming giant, having learned the hard way that the Sussex well of personal grievance, however deep, is not an infinite source of content, has wisely opted for a right-sized agreement focused on development. Harry and Meghan's Archewell Productions will now function less as a guaranteed hitmaker and more as a pitch factory, tasked with conjuring ideas compelling enough to greenlight. This new model reveals the harsh truth of the commercial marketplace. The couple's raw, intimate story was a one-time commodity. Their future value lies not in their past, but in their ability to become credible entertainment executives, curating and creating content that resonates beyond the narrow confines of their own biography. For every successful live to lead, there was a pearl that sank without a trace, a stark reminder that audience interest is fickle and that professional execution trumps personal fame in the long run. Yet, as Schofield and Bell likely dissected, this recalibrated deal is also a testament to the couple's stubborn resilience. They have not retreated from the public sphere. Instead, they are adapting, pivoting from being the stars of the show to becoming its producers and directors. This is a strategic, if necessary, evolution of their brand, from subjects to sovereigns of their own narrative kingdom. The content they choose to develop next will be intensely scrutinized. Will it lean into the partisan, progressive philanthropy that has drawn criticism, or will it broaden its appeal to justify the Netflix investment? Every future project will be a referendum on their commercial acuity. This question of brand identity and mission bleeds directly into the second, more explosive topic of the episode, the rumors of Prince Harry founding a rival charity in Africa. The symbolism of this potential move is so potent it feels almost cinematic. Africa for Harry is hallowed ground. It is the place where he felt most himself, where he could escape the ghost of his mother and the confines of his birthright. It is where he courted Meghan and where he has long fostered deep connections through his work with Sentabale, the charity he co-founded in honor of his mother to support children affected by HIV in Lesotho. The notion that he would now plant a new flag on the continent, potentially in direct or tangential competition with his own existing ventures, and, by extension, the royal family's philanthropic portfolio, is a declaration of profound independence. The reports suggest a focus on conservation and supporting local communities, areas that dovetail with his long-standing interests, but also place him on a collision course with the well-established, royally backed efforts of organizations like Tusk Trust, a favorite of his brother. This would not be mere parallelism, it would be a direct challenge. It would signal that Harry's vision for doing good is so fundamentally different from that of the institution he left that he must build his own apparatus from the ground up. The unspoken text here is a rejection of the traditional, patron-based, ribbon-cutting model of royal charity in favor of a more hands-on entrepreneurial and personally branded approach. The risk, of course, is one of fragmentation and perceived vanity? Could it be seen as diverting resources and attention from existing, effective charities for the sake of building a monument to his own ego? His supporters would argue it is the logical extension of wanting to make a tangible impact, free from the bureaucratic and reputational constraints of the firm. Together, the Netflix deal and the African charity rumors form a cohesive, two-pronged strategy for life after the royal family. One prong is commercial, building a self-sustaining financial engine through media. The other is philanthropic, establishing a legacy that is entirely their own, untethered from the crown and its associated complexities. It is the ultimate act of self-creation. However, as Schofield and Bell would undoubtedly explore, this path is fraught with peril. The commercial venture demands they become savvy Hollywood players in an industry notorious for chewing up and spitting out celebrities who try to become executives. The philanthropic venture demands they navigate the incredibly delicate ecosystems of African aid without replicating the very white savior tropes they would doubtless seek to avoid, and without creating damaging friction with the network of organizations, including his own Sentabale, already doing the work. What emerges from this week's news is a picture of a prince who is no longer just escaping from something, but actively building towards something else. He is not just a spare heir anymore. He is aspiring to be a mogul and a humanitarian pioneer in his own right. Yet the shadow of the institution he left looms large over every move. His projects will forever be measured against it, compared to it, and seen by many through the lens of his relationship with it. The success of this great Sussex gamble hinges on a single, formidable challenge: convincing the world to see Prince Harry not for the title he renounced, but for the empire he is trying to build.
Denied allegations that he gave his uncle Prince Andrew a bloody nose during an argument. This has been revealed in this new book about the Duke of York, entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York. And there are claims that there was this altercation between Prince Harry and Prince Andrew. They got in a physical altercation back in 2013 over something that Andrew said behind Harry's back. What do you make of this story?
Look, it's really interesting because in Spare we know that Harry and William had a punch-up. So it's not within the realms of possibility that Harry had a punch-up with Andrew. And the notion that the two most problematic members of the royal family could be, you know, way back then in 2013, could have been in this row. What would it be over? Look, there's also the
royal rumor mill, that ceaseless churn of whispered scandals and salacious gossip, has produced its most physically vivid image yet: a fistfight between a prince who left the firm and a prince the firm wishes it could leave. The allegation now being dissected with characteristically sharp insight by News Corp columnist Angela Mollard is as jarring as it is bizarre. That Prince Harry, in a fit of pique, once gave his uncle, Prince Andrew, a bloody nose during a heated argument. While the palace walls have long been imagined to contain multitudes of simmering resentments and frosty silences, this particular story introduces something far more primal and visceral: the scent of iron, the flash of pain, the shocking crimson proof of fractured familial bonds. It is a tale that, whether entirely true, partially exaggerated, or wholly apocryphal, serves as a perfect metaphor for the brutal internal civil war that has been raging within the House of Windsor, a conflict where words have failed, and in this telling, physicality took over. The context, as Mollard would undoubtedly frame it, is everything. This is not a random act of violence between two unrelated nobles. It is a clash of generations, worldviews, and perceived grievances so profound that they could apparently no longer be contained by drawing room etiquette. On one side, Prince Andrew, the Queen's once favored son, a man whose entire identity is enmeshed in the old world privileges of birthright, title, and a perceived entitlement to the protection of the institution. He is a figure who represents the establishment at its most stubborn and unaccountable. On the other, Prince Harry, the self-styled modernizer, the son who wielded his mother's public legacy as a weapon against the very system that forged it, and who ultimately chose to break away entirely. The argument, as the story goes, likely revolved around the escalating crises enveloping Andrew, the Jeffrey Epstein scandal and his catastrophic Newsnight interview, and the perceived damage he was inflicting upon the monarchy. One can imagine Harry, fresh from his own battles with the press and the institution, viewing his uncle not with familial sympathy but with blistering contempt, seeing in him the embodiment of the decadence and hypocrisy he believed was rotting the monarchy from within. For Andrew, Harry's departure and subsequent public criticisms would have been seen as the ultimate betrayal, a willful destabilization of the family business at its most vulnerable moment. In this pressure cooker environment, a heated exchange is not just plausible but inevitable. The allegation of a physical altercation, however, elevates it from a war of words to something far more symbolic. symbolic. A bloody nose is a temporary injury, but it is also a profound humiliation. It is a mark of shame, a very public sign of a loss of control and status. For Andrew, a man obsessed with hierarchy and his own position within it, the idea of being struck by his nephew, a junior member of the family, a mere spare, would represent an unimaginable inversion of the natural order. It is the physical manifestation of his fall from grace, not just criticized by the press and exiled by the institution, but physically dominated within the family itself. Angela Mollard's analysis would likely extend beyond the mere shock value to explore what this story reveals about the changing nature of the monarchy's internal dynamics. The days of grievances being swallowed behind a stiff upper lip and a coordinated public front are, if this story is to be believed, well and truly over. This is the Windsor ID unleashed. It speaks to an environment where decorum has shattered under the weight of scandal, leaving only raw, unfiltered emotion. There is no courtier, no private secretary, no reigning monarch who could have been present to stop this. It is a glimpse into the brutal, unmediated reality of a family in crisis. The palace's famous motto, "Never complain, never explain," is rendered utterly obsolete by the image of one prince wiping another's blood from his knuckles. Furthermore, the story's circulation is just as telling as the event itself. It is the kind of salacious gossip that would have been ruthlessly suppressed in a previous era, buried by a unified regime of courtiers and compliant newspapers, that it is now out in the wild, being discussed on platforms like Heirs and Spares, and analyzed by columnists like Mollard, indicates a complete breakdown in the control of the royal narrative. The walls have not only been breached, the inhabitants are now actively throwing stones through the windows. It benefits neither Harry nor Andrew, serving only to paint the entire institution as a dysfunctional soap opera. This suggests the leak came from someone on the periphery, perhaps a staff member or a courtier, whose loyalty has been eroded by the endless drama, or even from a faction within the family seeking to further diminish a rival. Whether the punch was literal or merely metaphorical matters less than the fact that the world is now ready to believe it happened. The public's appetite for this story stems from a culmination of years of spectacle. Harry's revelations in Spare about physical fights with William, Andrew's car crash interview, the Oprah special, the Netflix series. The monarchy has been successfully reframed not as a sacred institution, but as a deeply flawed family with billion-dollar real estate and very expensive problems. The image of Harry giving Andrew a bloody nose is the perfect brutal capstone to this era. It is a symbol of the Spare's rebellion against a corrupted heir, of the new world rejecting the old, of pent-up fury finally finding its release. It is the moment the family's private turmoil became a public blood sport, and as Angela Mollard would surely conclude, no amount of royal polish can ever wipe away that stain.
On a serious note, Prince William has had, some people might suggest, as you can imagine, quite frankly, enough of the shenanigans and, of course, the constant battles with his brother's wife, Meghan Markle. But this is not exactly what you may think at the very start, because he was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. And the real problem now regarding their titles all stems from what happened when they left. It wasn't necessarily the fights that they had while they were inside the British monarchy. And as we saw in that very famous Fab Four get-together, if you remember, everybody thought then, well, though, it wasn't exactly going to plan. Meghan hogging the limelight, having a bigger speech, talking about the place at the table. Catherine, battling away pregnancy, and must have thought, I'd rather be anywhere than sat here. But naturally, she wanted to support her husband, Prince William. Hence the reason, well, she did. But apparently what finally turned William off Meghan for good wasn't even the battle, of course.
The intricate and often impenetrable world of the British royal family operates on a currency of discretion, where unspoken understandings and centuries of protocol often mask deep-seated personal animosities. Yet occasionally, a truth so stark and unyielding breaks through the polished veneer that it cannot be ignored, reframing the entire narrative of the modern monarchy. The central unvarnished fact is this: the Prince of Wales, William, cannot abide Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. This is not a fleeting irritation, nor a simple clash of personalities weathered by time. It is a fundamental and immutable fissure that has shaped the destiny of the firm and will continue to define its future. Nothing has changed since the Sussexes' departure to Montecito, and nothing is likely to change. However, understanding the Prince of Wales requires accepting a critical paradox. His profound personal disdain exists alongside an unwavering, sacrosanct commitment to his destiny as king. Therefore, he will, with steely resolve, continue continue to do the one thing demanded of his future role. He will endure. The origins of this deep-seated antipathy are multifaceted, rooted in a clash of culture, expectation, and loyalty. From William's perspective, honed by a lifetime of preparation for the crown, Meghan represented not just a disruptor, but an existential threat to the delicate ecosystem of the monarchy. Her arrival was not merely that of a new family member, it was a foreign body introduced into a system that survives by assimilation, not revolution, where William and his brother Harry had spent decades building a carefully calibrated modus operandi with the press. A tense, often hostile, but ultimately necessary detente, Meghan entered with the uncomprehending confidence of a Hollywood star accustomed to managing her own narrative. The rules of the game, painstakingly learned by the brothers through traumatic experience, were seen by William not as challenges to be overcome, but as immutable laws of physics. Her attempts to bend or break them were not viewed as modernizing, but as dangerously destabilizing. This professional and institutional friction was irrevocably compounded by a deeply personal element, the fracturing of the bond between William and Harry. The so-called Fab Four facade at the Royal Foundation could not conceal the growing rift. William, the heir, pragmatic and cautious, saw his role as protector of the institution. Harry, the spare, emboldened by a partner who validated his long-held grievances, began to see his role as its reformer. To William, Meghan was not just influencing his brother, she was annexing him, creating a rival court, and severing the most important relationship in William's life outside of his immediate family. The loss of his brother, his confidant, and his partner in navigating the unique prison of their gilded existence is a wound that sources suggest William attributes directly to Meghan's influence. This is not something to be forgiven or forgotten. It is a foundational betrayal that has calcified into permanent coldness. Yet to assume this personal animus translates into public warfare is to misunderstand the very essence of William's character and his destiny. The Prince of Wales is not a man given to public outbursts or reckless vendettas. He is, above all else, a monarch in waiting, a man who has been sculpted from birth for a single purpose: to wear the crown. Every action, every non-action, every strained silence is filtered through the prism of duty to the monarchy's survival. His father, King Charles III, witnessed firsthand the destructive power of public familial discord, and the lessons of the War of the Waleses are etched into William's operational code. He understands that open hostility, however justified it may feel personally, is a luxury the crown can no longer afford. The institution's authority is derived from an aura of stability, continuity, and above-the-fray dignity. Engaging in a public spat with the Sussexes would only drag the monarchy into the muck of celebrity feuding, diminishing its stature and playing directly into a narrative of a petty, divided family. Therefore, William's strategy is one of majestic, impenetrable silence. He will do this. He will endure the interviews, the Netflix documentaries, the books packed with allegations. He will absorb the provocations and the personal slights without public comment. He will not issue rebuttals, engage in tit-for-tat leaks, or acknowledge the drama. His power lies in his inscrutability and his unwavering focus on the forward momentum of the crown. His work on homelessness, environmentalism, and national projects will continue unabated, presenting a steadfast image of a future king consumed by duty, not drama. This is not forgiveness, nor is it a thaw. It is a cold, calculated, and supremely disciplined form of conflict avoidance. It is the application of immense statecraft to a deeply personal conflict, treating the Sussex not as family to be reconciled with, but as a geopolitical problem to be contained and quarantined. The enduring nature of this stance means the current stalemate is permanent. There will be no grand reconciliation, no heartwarming photograph of the two couples reunited on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. The best that can be hoped for, as seen during the brief and tense encounters following the late Queen's passing and the King's coronation, is a functional, frosty civility conducted for the sake of wider family unity during moments of supreme national import. William will uphold the minimum requirements of his office, offering a nod, a brief exchange, nothing more. The door to the House of Windsor for Meghan is not just closed, it is bricked up. William's legacy will be one of securing the monarchy's future by steadfastly refusing to fight on the terrain his brother and sister-in-law have chosen. He cannot abide her, he will not forget the damage done, but he will master his own feelings and rise above the fray, forever defining himself not by the conflict he engaged in, but by the dignity he preserved for the crown he is destined to lead. Hope you enjoyed the video, please. Do not forget to leave your thought in the comments section. See you next time. Thank you for watching.